about is about how to do more data flow control, how to do things like gate, switch, select, and route. And gate and switch are they're going to use them all the time. Gate the most. Gate is pretty simple to understand. It's like literally just thinking of like what the object's name is, a gate. It basically allows you to close and open certain inlets and outlets. And actually specifically in the case of a gate, the outlets. And it also allows you to route it. That's a confusing thing because we're going to look at the object route, but gate lets you say which outlet things should go out of. So like, let's just grab an object and walk through it together. So I can say gate, and that's the object right there. It's pretty simple. One thing that I do not know why they made this choice. I kind of do, but like it's a little different than everything else we've done with Max. The data is going to come, the message that you want to pass along is going to come through this right inlet, and that's the hot inlet. And this left inlet is actually acting as the control mechanism for the gate, whether it's open or closed. When we talk about open or closed, we mean this outlet right here. And you can even say it says currently closed. So I could grab a little number right here, and that's the data I want to pass. And there's nothing fancy. I just want to see it come out right here. And if I hit lock, nothing happens. That's, like I said, like it's a gate. It's like literally a door. A door is an easier way to think of it. It's a door that's opened or it's closed. Right now it's closed. No data gets through here. And what it's expecting, I just unlocked it with Command E so you understand what just happened. It says 0 closes the gate, non-zero opens the gate outlet. And that non-zero corresponds to which gate you want to open. In this case, we only have this one. So if I grab a number box, or even let's like switch it up, I'll use a message. I'll type 0 in one, and 1 in the other. I can lock the patch. And if I click on 1, the gate should now be open, and the value passes through. If I click on 0, it doesn't pass through. So another way of doing that actually that you're going to find is much more common is this toggle object. Now toggle is one of the Max objects that's a GUI object. What it does is like it looks like an interface tool, and it may look more complex than that, but it's actually pretty simple in the sense that it's returning a 0 or 1. Output 1 or 0 when toggle is set. So, and it's like visually much easier to understand. I can lock this and open the gate. It's sending a 1 out. And let's just grab another message so we can visualize this to show there's nothing fancy here. You can see that if I turn it off, it's a 0. If I turn it on, it's a 1. And that's basically gate. And there's going to be instances where maybe like you're getting a stream of data coming in from another object, from an outside source, from something that, another software or language or program, and you want to have control of when you receive information and it passes down the chain and when it should stop. To make it a little more complex is you could also give gate a value, like let's say we give it a 4. And you can see it instantly created 3 new outlets. And that number is corresponding to how many outlets it should have. I could do the same thing here. And in this case, the toggle will work. All it's going to do though is only let me continue working with this one or closing it. So it's still just a numerical value. It's still an integer. So in this case, I could actually grab a number box. And all I need to do is give it the number of whichever gate I want to open. So if I type in a 2, now this box, this outlet, should receive the values 3, 4. This is what I mean by data flow, like controlling where messages go. And an example of this really simply could be I could have a random or 4. And these different randoms do different things. They hook up to different parts of an instrument I'm building, and I could want to change the random value right there. And I guess as an example, just to keep this going, I could grab a metro. Remember, metro is a great object. It outputs a bang message at intervals. So I'll type 250 every 250 milliseconds, a new bang will come out. And let's say that I want, usually I can also say at active, like that at symbol is addressing a specific argument in the object. It's saying like some things like the 250 it knows, there's the milliseconds, because it's the first argument, it's so common. But some of the less common arguments, you use an at to reference it. And if I actually back up, you can see that there's all these auto start, defer, quantize, but active just lets it so that I could say active and I have to give it a value. So say 1, and it's automatically turned on. And if I make a bang object here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, something like that. But you can see it's like spitting it out like that. So I can hook that up to each of these. And again, I'll do I. And now let's say I want to change the range for this third one. I'll type in 3 and 300 or 30, 3,000, sure. And now this one is changing. Now I want to change the first one like that. I can say 20. So you see I'm like routing the data. I'm saying what should be changed. I have a little bit of like show control kind of things. I could even use this, like, it doesn't have to be a number. I could actually, if I hold Option and drag, I can select patch cords. Hold Option, drag, beautiful. I could have this bang be the data that's coming through and move it over to the trigger right here. And now I can say which random object is actually updating. I could change this to 3, 4, 2, 0, and then none of them work. So that's essentially how the gate object works. It's basically when you want to send information to different places, and you want like a number box to be able to control which one you're choosing. On the other side of that, I won't spend too much time on this one because it's pretty similar. I could do switch. And it says accept messages from a specific inlet. And the same thing, I give it like a 4. And now it's the inlets they're changing. And I could have an integer here. Let's just do the same exact thing, random 5. Copy, paste. Now I'll get that metro object again, just good practice to keep building everything. Metro, and let's say I do 100 milliseconds at active 1. And I can hook it up to each of these. And now the number box is going to say which one we're receiving the information from. The command A to move it all, so it's a little easier to see. So if I want to receive it from here, actually I'm realizing it's going to be a little tricky. Let's change these up. Let's say this is 2, this is 400, this is 20,000. And this is 30. So now we're at number 2, so it's going to be a range between random numbers in the 400 range. If I go back to 1, it's a 0 or 1. If I go to 3, much larger numbers. So we're basically saying like we want to take the inlet information from 1 and pass that along. And that'll also be useful in terms of like setting up any kind of tools or instruments we build. Another two objects that we want to look at are select and route, and they're very similar, although they tend to do slightly different things. If I were to make an object called select, I can give it multiple arguments. I could give it one, but like let's start with a 10. Also give it a string just to change things up. Let's call it Gary. Maybe I can also do a float, 4.4. And what it's saying here is it says bang if the input matches 10, bang if input matches Gary, and bang if input matches 4.4. And I need to, so basically what it is, it's going to look for certain information and return a bang. And I didn't mention this last one, input if input doesn't match. We'll hook up something in a second to look at that. So I'm going to grab a number box. Also going to grab a message. And I'll put Gary in there just to seed it a little bit. I'll also grab a float. And just to clarify, it's all going in. This is the value to be tested. What we're doing is we're sending all of our information to this first inlet so we can test what this value is. And if that value matches any of these arguments, a bang will come out of that corresponding argument. I'm not hooking it up to these. These are basically a way to change, kind of like we did with random. If I grab that object very quick, and I wanted to override that 10, I would do that here. If I wanted to override on the fly what value I wanted it select to be looking at, I could hook up an integer box here. But that's not what we're doing. Right now, we're just testing all these values. So if I go 0, I start marching up, nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens. Boom, I hit 10. It's saying, I see the value you just gave me matches one of the things I'm looking out for. And that could be useful if like we're getting all these random numbers that are doing something else, but I want to make sure every time that a random number 5 comes up, that it can send a bang to have something else happen, because I want it always to happen then. Same with Gary. See, it comes out of this inlet. And if I change this to like Mark and then locked it, I'm not getting anything at all. Same with the float. I'm like moving up through here, moving up through here. Nothing, nothing, nothing. I didn't get anything. I'm too granular. So let's see if maybe I just have to type it in. There it is, 4.4. It triggers it. Notice that it's not this. Float numbers you have to be careful with, even if it was like, if I dragged it down to this and it doesn't trigger anything. Usually I believe if I drag this all the way out, sometimes it can like be like this. Like it's just like, so, you know, it may look like 4.4, but it actually, if you extruded it all the way out, you would see that it has this kind of hanging decimal point. Anyway. So an example of how I would want to use this is I say select, and let's just say 5. And I have another random, I guess N for object, hotkey, random, 6. Let's say I have another random object down here that I want. Every time basically we get a random number 5, I want to trigger another random number down here. Metro, 150, 140, 150. This time I'll do it the normal way. I'll grab a toggle to turn the Metro on. This is how most people use it, not that active one thing. And see, every time it hits 5, we get a bang from here. So I can kind of monitor to wait for something to happen. And I can say selectively I want to trigger something else happen when the input matches this other data that I've created. So the last object is very similar to select. It's called route, and it's a little bit more complex, but it's something that'll become very handy. Route is similar. I'm going to give it something to match up against to see if the data matches. Let's say if I do pitch, volume, I'll just do a shorthand there, frequency. And if I hover over, it says outputs if input matches volume, outputs if input matches frequency. So it's set up the same way. I'm going to like have a message here. And rather than a bang, it's actually going to pass information along. And this is actually a situation where lists are really important. So I'm going to grab another message box. And I'll say pitch. And if I click this, you would think that I would see the word pitch down here. And there's just a bang. Why did that happen? Because it's actually checking the first element of the list as a key. So basically the way, if I type a comment here, it's looking for a list, a string of, or sorry, that's a wrong word, a group of data. So I could say pitch, 64, 34, 54. It's just checking that that first element here matches something. And if it does, it's going to pass the rest of the list. So it's almost stripping away that key that says like you should put this information here and pass along the rest of the information. So if I actually type that all back in, doesn't matter what the numbers are specifically, and lock it. See, now it is passing that information along. It stripped away the word pitch because it matches here and keeps passing it. And if I copy pasted this and change this to volume, I guess I gotta actually, volume what? And change these numbers because there's already something stored down there. Now you can see it's coming out of the volume outlet. It strips away the word vol, and then it's passing the information along here. So that's essentially how that works. I'm trying to think if I should give you a more complex example and string all this together. But I think this will work for the moment. If you go and look at the tutorial MaxPatch I have, it'll give you some more complex examples. But again, these inlets are just if you want to change what it's matching against here. And I actually forgot to show you something with select that'll help you here too. If it gets something it doesn't match, it'll output it in this last one, because sometimes we still want that information to flow along. So I could just change this to anything, and it's going to come out of that last outlet, because it's like, it doesn't match anything. I don't know what you're trying to do, but let's have this go into this kind of like trash collection, data dump kind of area over here. But we're going to look out for this stuff over here. So that is essentially how gate, switch, select, and route all work.